I have a confession to make. It's a sword stain on my history and perhaps unbelievable coming from someone who has a channel that reviews comics. But I have never read Neil Gaiman's The Sandman. I know. Please forgive me. It came out at an awkward time for me. I was really just ramping up into comics, but I was maybe just a little bit too young for Vertigo. And then when I was older and in college, I was broke, so I never read it. It's one of those things that everybody tells me is fantastic, and I always say, well, I'll get around to it, but I never have. And now Netflix has come out and seemingly done me a solid by making a TV show out of it. Now, I know about the story, but I've never read it. I don't know all the nuances on it. And frankly, I just don't have a connection to it. It wasn't part of my adolescent growing up experience. So when I'm watching this Netflix show, I have to take it at face value and judge it based on what I see, because frankly, I don't have anything else to compare it to. Netflix has had pretty much mixed success in the last few years. They started off with wonderful shows like House of Cards and Marvel's Daredevil, but recently, it's a mixed bag. Many shows have been just plain awful, like Cowboy Bebop and Cuties. Ugh. Some shows have been great though. Stranger Things season 4 was fantastic. I can't wait to see season 5 of Cobra Kai. So where did Sandman end up? Well, before we get into what went wrong, let's take a quick look at what went right. The first thing is this show is visually appealing. It's got a great use of colors. It's got a nice set designs. Everything feels very fresh and lively. The dream worlds and even hell have their own flavor, so it's very easy to tell where you are, and they evoke the kind of emotions. Hell is supposedly very cold and dead and uninviting, definitely a place where you don't want to go. Whereas the dream world, on the other hand, is very lush, and you probably would want to end up there. The second is the overall appeal to mythology in the storyline. We have the main character, Dream, who is an anthropomorphized dream, the dream state, human dreams. And they kind of mix in what you do when you go to sleep, those kind of dreams, and dreams as in aspirations. I dream of one day having $1 million and 5 blondes, that kind of thing, the usual. And in addition to this, the first story arc, it was the first 3 or 4 episodes where Dream is captured, what happens during his captivity. He has his magical totems or baubles of authority stolen from him. He loses a ruby pendant, he loses a leather bag of sand, and some cross between like a plague doctor's mask and bondage wear. That thing's gone too. They never really explain exactly what that does, but hey, whatever. And those were great. Now, that first story arc has a few minuses, which is the Raven Matthew and the diner scene, which we will definitely get into later. But overall, it was fantastic to see a lot of these mythological creatures come to life. How does this idea of dreaming and his brothers and sisters, death, desire, despair, how do they all fit together and work together? What is their role in comparison to humanity? That was all big brain stuff, and it came off really well. Unfortunately, much of what went wrong was due to the earthly concerns of man. Much of the big problems with the Sandman almost feel like death by committee. Well, you had this original source material that occasionally pokes out from behind the clouds and you can occasionally illuminate the story. It just seems like too many fingers in the pot, too many cooks in the kitchen. You had Netflix people who wanted to put their stamp on this well-loved story, and frankly, it didn't come out well. Problem number one was the cast. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking here's the part where he goes into complaining about how things are race swapped. Nah, not really. I didn't read the original book. I know that Death was some manic pixie girl, very pale white, and in this show it's played by a black woman, but I thought she did a good job. It wasn't bad. I'm not overly attached to that white image as Death. But what was problem is a lot of the actors. Now you had Tom Sturridge, who played Dream, and he was okay because Dream is essentially a Neil Gaiman self-insert. So all you need is someone who looks kind of like Neil, and Tom plays him with a very gravelly voice. So we know that he's a manly man and in charge. And it was, kind of okay. But then we get into problems. We have Patton Oswalt playing Matthew the Raven. Now, this just doesn't work. Patton Oswalt playing the Raven comes off more like Eddie Murphy playing Mushu in Mulan, or perhaps playing Donkey in Shrek. It's almost like a comic relief character where there shouldn't be one. It's out of place. It feels weird. And Patton Oswalt, I'm sorry, that guy just does not have the gravitas to be in this, what should be an epic series. Another problem was Gwendolyn Christie playing Lucifer. Now, the writer, Neil Gaiman, he seems to have a real fetish for Lucifer. Lucifer Morningstar, the Dawn Star. He's got a whole TV series, comic series, shows up in a lot of his works. And, well, it's okay to have Lucifer as a woman. I mean, traditionally, he's seen as a man, but, whatever. The problem is more that Gwendolyn Christie, aka Brienne of Tarth, is about 45 years old. And Lucifer is supposed to be the most beautiful of the angels. And, not that 45-year-old women aren't beautiful, but are they going to be as hot as, let's say, a 25-year-old? No. So already you seem to have very strange casting choices. Now, I do find Gwendolyn to be, a halfway decent actor. I can stand watching her in things. The problem is, at no point does she act kind of hot or someone that I would desire or someone that could perhaps pull the wool over my eyes as the father or mother or whatever they're going to call her of lies. And, well, it just doesn't work. And as we go forward, we'll see this is a problem with a lot of the other characters. We can see the problem start right away with Joanna Constantine, played by Jenna Coleman. Now, in the original book, it was played by John Constantine. John Constantine is a famous magician. There was a Keanu Reeves movie. There was a fantastic series that only lasted one season on NBC. And the character has shown up a bunch of times in the CW shows. Here they decided to gender swap him into a woman. Now, I don't know if this was an issue with the rights, like maybe Netflix somehow didn't have the rights to use John Constantine, but this was a really dreadful choice. The problem is, in the show, as well as for the character, John Constantine is burdened by accidentally getting a young girl sucked into hell where she's presumably been tortured for however many Earth years, which should be an eternity by their years. This is very symbolic of the burden that men have to face. They do these dangerous jobs. They have to put themselves out. They often have to make impossible decisions. And the burden, the stress of that falls on them. And John Constantine is an example of this. His clothes are normally a disheveled trench coat, white button-down shirt, tie that looks like he slept in it for 5 weeks. His hair's a mess. He stinks of cigarettes and booze. But we don't get that from Joanna. She's a very attractive woman who looks very well put together. It makes sense why John Constantine is such a bastard who just does things for money. But Joanna, I mean, she's kind of hot and people are doing things for her. It really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And this really detracts from the character. Now, we get worse when we talk about desire. Desire is played by Mason Alexander Park, who is described as being a non-binary film, TV, and stage actor. If you saw Cowboy Bebop, and for the love of God, if you haven't, don't go and watch it. He played what I guess maybe was supposed to be a woman or perhaps a transsexual singing in a bar. Supposed to be the largest act in town. Well, in this series, he plays desire, which is the embodiment of humans' desire for things. The problem is this doesn't work at all because A, he's not that attractive to either men or women. It's not like we're talking about those really cute Thai ladies that you can't tell are actually men and men might be physically attracted to them. No, this is pretty clearly not original manufacturer parts, if you take my meaning. Well, men don't find that attractive. Do women find that attractive? No, just a very narrow subset of people. And sure, there are people who would find him attractive like this, but it's not the majority. So how can that be desire? Is it only the desire of a small few? Is it that desire wishes to be something that it's not? Which is very confusing and doesn't seem to go along with the theme of the rest of these endlesses. And the problem with this just goes on and on. And we even end up with, later on in the show, there is only one white man who is kind of sort of positive that Dream meets every 100 years to see what the guy is up to until the guy wishes for death. Otherwise, it's only gay people, various minorities, and women. The only straight men, especially straight white men, are portrayed as cheaters, philanderers, they're liars, they are murderers. You don't have one positive representation of men. And it is very strange because you would think in a country like the US, you would find some. It certainly doesn't need to be all of them, but it is weird when there is a total absence of them. Another problem is the sexuality swapping. So, for example, there's a scene in a diner where, through the use of Dream's magic amulets, a person is able to allow people to live their life without lying. And everybody does. And it's a really messed up situation because you have normal people in a diner going about their day, but all of a sudden, everyone swaps who they're sleeping with. like you have a husband and wife combination, and they've had some problems. So the wife starts flirting with and then sleeping with a guy who's maybe like 20. The husband goes into the kitchen and talks to the chef, who is a male, and it's revealed that the chef goes over to his waitress's house to sleep with her son, who's 21, and the husband goes in there, not gay at all, and just decides to let the chef suck him off. There's a lesbian who's waiting for her girlfriend. The waitress is distraught, so she starts sleeping with the lesbian for no reason. I mean, in what world would this happen? If I could understand people wanting to get into fights, wanting to kill each other over not being able to tell the social lubricating lies that we have in our societies, but are they going to just start sleeping with people who they normally would not be attracted to? What? There was no inference that the guy changed his mind to where you just sleep with whoever. This is part of the problem because the whole show begins to ring false. You intuitively know if I'm not normally into dudes, I'm not going to suddenly switch. If I'm not normally into women, I'm not going to suddenly switch. It's this strange idea that, any hole's good, just doesn't work for the average person. Another very strange thing is the lack of conflict. Now, okay, this isn't a show where stuff blows up. We're not seeing buses explode everywhere. Although there was a scene where everyone was trying to kill each other for a night, and then I guess everyone just forgot about it. Made no sense to me. Maybe it made sense in the book. I don't know. But the problem is you need conflict, and there's just not enough of it. There's too much of characters just trying to get along. And they're not put into situations where conflicting desires or goals would cause any sort of friction. But what we do see a lot of is walking and talking. Walking and talking and talking. I was getting PTSD flashbacks to the Lord of the Ring films. I mean, my God, how much walking and talking around the UK and presumably the US are you going to do? Can't you think of some other situation for them to be in that is maybe metaphorical to who is winning a certain argument or who is losing? It's just plain weird. And the last and most important part is the degradation of the hero. Now, as I understand from the original graphic novel, Dream, as he goes through his 100 years of imprisonment, and then he interacts with the human world, he begins to change and take on more human emotions. Okay, that's great, but you don't have to make him a big puss. And that's exactly what happens. This is exactly the problem with all of these Netflix shows. You take the main character, and Dream is the king of his realm. He is the lord of his realm. And what do we have? We have him apologizing and being mealy-mouthed and, oh, well, gee, I guess I was wrong about this. And, oh, my gosh, you knew these things before me. And, oh, no. So is he the all-powerful Lord of Dreams, or is he not? Because I'm getting a lot of mixed messages. And this essentially is the problem with most of these shows. You could see in Disney, Obi-Wan. He's just not there anymore. He's like Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi. And we have the same exact problem with Dream. So by the end of the show, I really didn't care about him anymore. He was just kind of a wuss. And that's the end. So was this show worth it? Well, I mean, there was some cool parts. I would say the first 3 episodes, minus the diner scene, were pretty good. But then the rest of it, I could really do without. It is a little bit odd story-wise compared to most Netflix shows, which have one single story that lasts throughout the whole season, or every episode is different. It's episodic. This, you have the beginning arc, capture, finding his stuff. Then you have a couple individual episodes in the middle, and the last three or four have to do with the vortex, which, like, nothing happened, and the end result is it doesn't seem to matter anyways. So, whatever. Well, if you like this review, give this a thumbs up, leave a comment down below, and I will be back eventually to review more TV and movies.